Thank you, Lincoln Wheeler, for that intro music. Beautiful. This is our applause. Welcome to the first and hopefully last ever virtual Mad Story Slam. Next year, this will be happening in the new Leotis Mcdaniel Library in the brand new building. I'm Kelly Gomez, and I taught at Madison Leotis Mcdaniel for 16 years. And luckily I get this job every year. So thank you, storytellers and judges and teachers and students and audience members who've come, our math geniuses, all of you that are making this happen, Miss Sullivan, who constantly creates these opportunities for kids to share their voice with us and their stories. The Mad Story Slam is a storytelling competition in the style of the Moth National Storytelling Competition. And today's storytellers or slammers have 5 minutes each to tell a real and true story about something that happened to them based on this year's theme. This year's theme is borders. We'll invite storytellers to turn on their cameras when they speak, if they're not already on. And then this is a competition. So we have judges, and they have the unenviable responsibility of assigning scores to these stories. Our first and second place winners each win $50, and they'll represent Madison at the Truth Be Told Interscholastic Story Slam tomorrow night, Thursday, February 25th at 7 p.m. You can get your free tickets if you haven't already on the Madison Library website. It takes courage to get up here in front of you, even in a virtual environment. So let's be supportive of all of our storytellers today. A couple of norms. The chat is on, but the chat feed can be really distracting while you're trying to tell a story. So we're going to hope that while folks are performing, you are not chatting, just like you wouldn't talk over somebody on a stage. And then after they finish, you can bomb the chat with all this positive stuff. We have an Avid digital claps document that Miss Sullivan's going to put into the chat if you want to grab it, and you can give them Avid digital applause if you would like. Do you want me to drop it in there? It'll be there in a minute. So at poetry competitions all over the globe, MCs say this: the points are not the point is the poetry. So while the point today is the power of sharing stories, we do in fact have these judges that use a scoring guide. It's the same scoring guide that all of the schools doing this competition will use in order to pick someone to compete tomorrow. So I'm going to introduce today's judges. We have Carissa Carasy. Carissa is a Gear Up Tosa who grew up performing her own writing during her tumultuous time as a youth. Will you wave to everybody, Carissa? Woo! We also have Steve Smith. Steve's from Portland. Steve, will you give us a wave? There he is. He's been in education for 14 years. He has a sophomore at Roosevelt High School and twin 8th graders at George Middle School. He loves sports and reading. I cannot imagine having twin 8th graders. Next is Marcia Truman. Oh, nope. Next is Christine Putnam. Christine is a speech therapist and has worked in education for almost 20 years. Christine, will you wave? In addition to spending time with her family, she loves to read, listen to music, and do all the puzzles in the Sunday New York Times. That's a smart lady. Thank you. And then Pam Deemer. Pam, will you wave for us? Thank you. Pam's a person who, as a middle-aged woman, has a recurring dream that she is still in high school. Can you imagine? I bet I'm gonna have one now tonight. Thanks a lot, Pam. Okay. We're about to welcome our first storyteller to the screen, but to give them one last deep breath beforehand, here's what Mexican poet Roberto Castillo Uriarte says about borders, geographical, linguistic, and cultural. He writes that to him, borders means to live between two distinct worlds, pesos and dollars, tacos and hamburgers, tias and uncles, tequila and whiskey, Pedro Infante and Tony Bennett, quinceañeras and sweet 16s, Spanish and English, and then to cross them, unite them through language, and from that union of two different languages to invent such things as fish tacos, Toluca Lake, tortilla shop, and to have children with names like Stacy Gutierrez or Chewy Smith. Now here we go. Our first storyteller is actually a video because Esther Przinski is, she's trying out for volleyball, right, Miss Sullivan? So here's her video. You might want to turn your volume up.
Okay, so this was a day in 2018. My friend and I were in 7th grade and we're walking home and we're excited to hang out. And we're just walking down the sidewalk, the sun is shining, we're just talking. I think we were laughing about something funny that happened in class that day. So we walk up to her front door, we open it, and we're standing in the doorway. And we look across to her back door and see that it's standing like wide open. And we're like, huh, that's kind of weird. And in her house, you can just see like her back door and her front door just right across. So we're like, that's kind of odd, but her back door is a little bit sticky, and so we knew that like sometimes if it's not closed perfectly, it can just blow open. And so we assumed that that's what happened, but we're like, you know, and so jokingly we just yell like, if anybody's in here, I'm a, you know, whatever. And before we even could finish that sentence, we heard a bunch of like crashing and noise coming from the back of our house. And we're like, oh my goodness. And so we, like barely even thinking, we just dropped everything and sprinted out of our house and around the corner, and our hearts are beating and everything. And then we see our friends who are walking home from school too. And we're like, oh my gosh, guess what just happened? Like that was so crazy and weird. And so we're talking to them. And we're like, okay, you know, it's probably fine. Like, maybe it was just a raccoon or something, or an animal got in. And my friend, like, I thought she'd be more anxious and worried about it. But I feel like I was almost more, like, stressed about it. And so we're like, okay, it's probably fine. But we're a little bit freaked out and on edge, right? So we decided to just go back to the school, because she lived pretty close to the school we went to at that time. And just wait and, like, call her mom and, you know, describe what had happened. And so we're hanging out at school, and we're just like calming down a little bit, and because we needed to wait until her mom got off of work. And so we just waited there with people, and I think I was worrying that the person or whatever was in her house was gonna like come back and take my phone in my backpack. I don't know where I thought that was a reasonable idea. But anyways, her mom gets back and she comes home, and I think she might have called the police or something just to like get things checked and make sure things were all right. And so it's late at that time, so we both go our separate ways. She goes home to her house and I go to my house. So then later on we talked to her mom, and she told us that when she got home, she noticed her bedroom door to the outside, because she had, in her room, she had a door just going right to the backyard. It was wide open, and their drawers in their rooms were all tossed through and open, and like someone had just gone through everything. That's a little bit unsettling. And so they went around like just looking and making sure that like nothing super important had been taken. And so they noticed that in my friend's room, she had a coin jar that she was like saving up change, and they took that, but they didn't take, like, she had dollar bills out, maybe in like a 20. They didn't take that. And her mom had her checkbook out on her dresser, and they didn't take that. And so they're, you know, a little bit confused, but like grateful that nothing super significant had been taken from them. And so everything's all right after that. And then her mom talked to their neighbor, and he said that that same day he had found boot print, like a muddy big boot print on his back door. And so I guess he got lucky because his door was actually closed, so the person couldn't get in. So my friend wasn't so lucky. But so now that I, you know, think about it, we were probably maybe overreacting a tiny bit with all this running out and being all worried and in a frenzy. But it was a little bit scary, and we were both a little bit more paranoid after that, because just something unexpected happens. Like, you don't expect for there to be someone like where you think you're going to be safe. So losing that security for both of us was a little bit scary and like unnerving. And then also it wasn't in my house, but my friend, her mom, like having someone cross the physical borders of your home is probably pretty uncomfortable and takes a little bit to get like back to normal. But since then things have been all right, and they got better locks for the back door, and nothing else has happened.
All right, Lincoln's going to play us some music while the judges score Esther. And please go ahead and throw your congratulations and, you know, love into the chat. Even though Esther's not physically here with us, we get to practice with our applause. We can put a couple of things in the chat there for Lincoln, because that's beautiful music. Thank you so much. It's hard to do this in a virtual room when you can't hear people and feel their energy, and so that music makes a huge difference. Thank you. Judges, are you feeling ready? You've submitted you ready for the next one? Okay. Next up, I believe, Mr. Fredgan, are we ready? All right, we're going to give Mr. Fred Gant.
Yes.
Oh, you are. You ready for me? Okay, so next up, Mr. Fred Gant is going to share with us Macy Pine's story. Is Macy an audio or a video?
It's both.
Okay, well, good. Awesome.
Story starts towards the end of summer 2020. And my family wanted to leave Portland for a while to get a change of scenery. And we decided to go to Bend, Oregon, which wasn't too far or too expensive to rent a house for the week. The house we rented had the Deschutes River right in our backyard. It had a nice little hammock in between these two big trees and a big lush patch of grass. We spent the majority of the week lounging around while my dad fished, my mom read, and me and my brother usually hung out in the water. On a nice Saturday afternoon, my dad mentioned that he had brought a raft with him. He inflated it to show us, and it was fairly sturdy and could fit two people with small ropes going around the exterior that you could cling a dry bag to. On Google Maps, the river looked calm and peaceful for the most part, but at the very end, you could see there were a few sharp rocks and rapids to go through, but it didn't look too big. My brother Charlie and I climbed into the raft that could barely fit the two of us. Charlie is a tall, skinny 14-year-old boy who isn't the best swimmer, but he can manage. We clipped on our dry bags that contained our two phones and towels, just in case. Before pushing us down the river, my dad said goodbye in a really odd way. Me and my brother were joking about how he made it seem so final and like he wouldn't see us again. That was just a funny detail. The first 15 minutes were so beautiful. There was vibrant green grass along the bank of the river, and the water was clear and smooth with barely any bumps at all. Then we came to a fork in the river. Both sides led to rapids, and in the middle was a giant log with water being sucked underneath it like a vacuum. Charlie and I decided to go left at first, but the closer we got, the more vigorous the rapids started to look. We both panicked and began to argue over which way to go. We started to head down the middle towards the huge vacuum log, and at that point, the current was too strong to try to go another way. Immediately, we were sucked underneath the log, falling off our raft and completely submerged underneath the water. We came up above the water, laughing at the irony of us arguing over which way to go and ending up going the worst way possible. But instantly, the smiles are wiped off our faces and the border between fun and fear is crossed. Imagine moving so fast and having no control over where you're going, not knowing what is where, and literally anything could maim you at any second. I grabbed a hold of the raft and managed to get back on for a second before seeing Charlie still struggling to keep his head above the water. I climbed back off the raft into the treacherous waters, and with all the strength I could, I pushed the raft towards him. I take off my life jacket and throw it towards him too, because I'm trying to give him something to hang on to. But neither one of these worked, and it landed nowhere near him, because I have no control over where the water goes. He manages to grab a hold of a large rock above and in the middle of the water and hoist himself up. He was out of breath and shivering, but at least he was out of the rapids. I called over to some people up ahead on the bank of the river that Charlie was a small 10-year-old boy who couldn't swim and he was stuck in the rapids. I figured if they thought he was younger and smaller, they would rush to him. I was right. Immediately, people went over to call Water Patrol and get him off the rock and make sure he was okay. Now it was time for me to worry about myself. I landed in a calmer part of the river and grabbed the raft while it was just barely in my reach. I dragged it ashore on the other side of the river. A little over an hour later, I managed to find my way up the hill to the main road in a neighborhood. Then a woman who lived nearby gave me a ride to where water rescue was getting Charlie out of the water. Charlie and I both have very different memories of this event, but we both can agree that there was definitely a border crossed between when we went from laughing and having fun to being in fear for our lives and in serious danger.
I don't know about you, but I just had a memory of the first time I went over Houston Falls and was ejected from the raft. Okay, Lincoln's going to give us some music while we chat her up in the chat. Give her some love, and judges, do your thing. How you doing, judges? You feel ready? Great. I want to take just a quick second to applaud our audience, attendees and panelists, because you guys do a wonderful job of giving very specific feedback, talking about details and imagery, and I love it. For our next storyteller, please welcome Abdul Al-Masri.
Hello. The first bomb, I was upstairs looking at the sky. I saw smoke outside from a building that was burning. I thought that something had caused a fire, but it was a bomb that exploded. That was the first time. After I watched the fire for a few minutes, my brother Seth came to me and pulled me downstairs, and the bullet whistled between us so fast we couldn't see it. The war in Syria started when I was 7 years old. To this day, war is still happening. Are you can hear me? Oh, sorry. I thought I cut off.
You're good.
The war in Syria started when I was 7 years old. To this day, war is still happening there. Before the war, Syria was a unique place for everyone who came to our country. The mountains, the trees, the rivers, the weather all attracted people from all over the world. When the sun set, the mountains changed colors to black and orange, reflecting the sun. There were people in open air markets, and we always liked to talk with people and visit other cities and parts of the country every month. It all changed when the war started. A lot of people lost their lives from the bombs that exploded around us. It was a deep, constant fear. Each time there was a bomb in the middle of the day or at night, we didn't know where the bomb would fall or if it would fall on us. It was an everyday fear, a paralyzing fear. There were stores that were bombed and damaged to the point that only the walls were standing. Nothing there, no groceries, nothing in the markets, all burned like a piece of cake that had been lost for years. And then one day my dad decided we would leave Syria very quickly without even discussing it with my mom. My brother Seth and I were scared and we wanted to leave Syria. I was afraid that something would happen to me or my brothers or someone I loved in my family. It was at sunset that day, and I really thought something had been taken from me. I didn't know then what it was, my dream, my childhood, the people who I loved, my friends, my city, my country, my homeland, the food, the Ramadan celebrations. Where had all of this gone from my life? The time came, so we gathered, my nieces, my aunties, and my uncles in my house to say goodbye. My uncle bought a chocolate and some cake for me. At the moment that I was going to the car, he came and gave me a huge hug, and I was crying, he was crying, and I was crying. I couldn't eat the chocolate he gave me. When I opened it, I didn't feel like the taste of the chocolate was like before. I thought it wasn't something that I could hold in my stomach. I didn't like it. I was 8 years old. So there we were in the car, my mom, my brother Sip, my sister, and I, and the taxi driver. And we drove over the mountains and landslides, and it was very green. I didn't feel anything. We drove to a home of a family and ate there and shared information. I was a child and I was tired and don't know what they talked about. I started feeling sad. I ate the last food that I ate in Syria. It was rice with chicken and soup. We had peas in the rice, just how I liked it. And then we crossed into Jordan. It was night. We were in a valley surrounded by trees and rocks and mountainous land, very steep. My mom, my brother, my sister, and I walked, holding my mom's hand tightly to not feel so terrified. We walked and saw in the sky so far away from us a big fire exploding like a tornado in the direction of my country. My mom's face was like a stone, so I didn't feel her sadness. We kept walking for nearly 5 hours to the bus stop, and then we rode until we saw a wall surrounded by broken iron chains, like going to prison. It was exactly like that. Even though we didn't know it yet, once we went in, we could not go outside again. They saw us if we ate, if we drink, if we went to buy groceries. The people from Jordan gossiped about us until we got sick from them talking about us so much.
15 seconds.
We stayed in this prison, not prison, where it was so unhygienic, and where there was no room or space. The bathroom, the tents were all dirty and full of marks. I still hate marks, dive bombing around our heads all the time. We stayed a few weeks until my dad could come. Living in the camp was a nightmare that transitioned us to our different life outside Syria to a darker view of people that I'm still fighting. I fought people hating my culture and religion. When we crossed into Jordan, we didn't just cross a geographic border. We crossed a border from being treated like a civil people to be treated as though we were hardly even a human.
Abdul, thank you so much for sharing that amazingly powerful story. I'm feeling it right in my heart. Okay, Lincoln, we need a little music. Thank you, Lincoln. Judges, you good? All right. Thank you. We have 4 more storytellers this afternoon. Our next up is Eva Andrews.
And I am going to be sharing Eva's video for her. So
Thank you, Mr. Irikawa. Yay.
All right, Eva Andrews, here we go. Enjoy.
Okay, let me set the scene. It is 2008 or 2009. It is mid-afternoon on Christmas, and my family is going to the beach the next day. And so my parents are packing for the beach. My brother and I are bored, and so we decide we're going to watch Mary Poppins. And so we go and we get some popcorn. We get those microwavable popcorn bags, and we microwave it, and we have the popcorn. We go up to my parents' bedroom, and we watch Mary Poppins on their TV up there. And so we're eating the popcorn. We get to the end of the bag where there's just popcorn kernels at the end, and we decide, or my brother has the idea, to put these popcorn kernels into our ears. And so we're both just like putting these popcorn kernels into our ears and seeing if we can get them out again. And eventually we both got a single popcorn kernel stuck into each of our ears. Well, one of our ears. And so I ran downstairs first. I was very happy. I was smiling. I was like 4, maybe 5. And I was really happy about this. And I told my parents, I was like, Mom, Dad, I have a popcorn kernel stuck in my ear. And they're like, what? What happened? And my brother comes down the stairs and he's like, guys, me too. I have a popcorn kernel stuck in my ear. My parents don't know what to do. They get a flashlight and tweezers. They're like trying to get these popcorn kernels out of our ears. They can't. And so we go to the doctor. And the doctor was looking in our ears. They're trying to get them out. They can't either. And so they were like, okay, guys, you guys can go to the nose, throat, and ear doctor the next day, and we'll just like tell them you're coming. You don't have to worry about making an appointment or anything. So we're like, okay, we're going to the beach tomorrow, but yeah, we can go in the morning. So we go back home. My brother and I sleep with popcorn kernels in our ears. And so I don't think it was that uncomfortable. I don't remember. So the next day, we wake up, we go to the nose, throat, and ear doctors, and they're like, no, we weren't expecting you, like the doctors the day before said that they were going to be, but they let us in anyway. And so they're like digging around in our ears, trying to get these popcorn kernels out. They get my brother's out like pretty quickly. It's not that much of an issue, but for me, it's a bigger issue because like the moisture, the heat or something was making the popcorn kernel expand inside my ear. And so they were very close to like making me go into surgery and like put me under so I can like have surgery to get this popcorn kernel out of my ear. Thankfully, that didn't happen. They got the popcorn kernel out of my ear. And then we went to the beach later that day. But in conclusion, don't put popcorn kernels in your ears. Thank you.
Man, I've heard of peas up the nose, Legos, but I have never heard of a popcorn kernel in the ear before. Lincoln, give us a little music. You can give some props to Ava in the chat, please.
And even though Eva was on video, she is actually here. She has graced us with her presence. So be sure to show her some love for that story.
Judges, how are you doing? Can you give me a thumbs up if you're ready? Wonderful. You're getting really quick, getting good at it now, huh? All right, we have next up Jennifer Larios Grave.
This story happened about 3 years ago, I would say. My grandma had just recently come from Guatemala. She's this like 5 foot indigenous woman from Guatemala. And she had gotten here on a visa, and it was like her first week here. And she was still getting used to the neighborhood. She was still getting used to being in our house since she was so used to being alone in Guatemala. She's the most independent and strongest woman I've ever met. She's been a widow for the past 30 years, so I assume that's where she gets it from. But she's this closed woman. She doesn't show emotion. She doesn't talk about her feelings, but she has the most beautiful laugh ever. And I remember her being here. She would sleep in my room since we were still trying to get everything ready for her, and we were still trying to get all the rooms situated. And my grandma loved going on walks since it's what she loved to do back home in her country. She came here and she planned to do the same thing. And so I still remember what type of day it was. It was a cloudy day like most days in Portland. The clouds were gray. The clouds were gray and very gloomy. And there was rain, and it smelled like pine trees and like grass outside. And she came into my room. She told me she was leaving. She was going on a walk. But there was one problem. The problem was the barrier between languages. She spoke this dialect from Guatemala called Quiche, and I couldn't understand it and I couldn't speak it. So we really weren't that close. I didn't know how to communicate her. There was no form of communication. All I could do was hug her and wave. She told me she was going on a walk, and so I just kind of smiled and told her, okay. And so I saw where she was leaving. She had her little purse with her. So I was like, oh, she's going to go on a walk. So I was like, oh, she'll probably be back in like 40 minutes or so. And I watched an episode of like Grey's Anatomy, and I just tried to waste time. And I looked at the clock. It was like 11 by that time, and she had left like at 10. So I was like, oh, she should probably be back soon. I'll just wait a little bit. And it became like 11:30, and so I started getting worried. I was like, where is she? I know she doesn't take this long, and she wouldn't go that far because she didn't even know the neighborhood yet. So I called my parents because they weren't home, and they were like, oh, no, I'm pretty sure she's just on a walk. She'll be home soon. Don't worry about it. So I told myself, I was like, yeah, okay, don't worry about it then. But then it was like 12 o'clock, and I started getting really worried. And I was like, where's Grandma? And so I looked outside. I looked up the street. Nothing. I was like, okay. I called my parents again. I'm like, hey, she's not home. It's almost been 2 hours. They were like, okay, we'll try to come home soon. Don't worry about it. She'll be home soon. So I kept telling myself, okay, everyone's telling me not to freak out, so don't freak out. And I was just home. I looked out the window. I remember telling myself, please come home. Please come home. And I started getting super nervous. And by that time, it was like 1. And that's when I was like, yeah, something's wrong. I can just feel it. She's lost or something happened. And so I called my parents, and I'm like on the edge of crying because I'm like, where is she? And so they like came home as fast as they could. And I was like, guys, where's Grandma? So they went out in the car trying to go look for her, and nothing. And I started getting so scared because I was on the phone with them. They were telling me, we don't see her. Did she tell you where she was going? And I was like, no, I don't even know where she is. She didn't have a phone because she had just gotten here. We were still trying to get that fixed. So she had nothing. And she didn't speak any English or any Spanish. And nobody here speaks dialect. So I was like, how is she even going to tell somebody, hey, I need to come home? And so I started getting so scared. And so my parents were out looking for her while I was still here. I was looking out the window. I was like, nothing and nothing. I was like, please come home. And then I see this little green Honda pull up to the house. And then I see she walks out. And I'm so confused because I'm like, she doesn't even know anybody here. And she enters the door, and immediately she starts crying. And I freak out because I don't even know what to do. She doesn't show her emotions. What am I supposed to do? And I can't even ask her, are you okay? What's wrong? And she starts crying. So all I could do was hug her. And I tried to tell her it's okay, you know. So I called my parents. I'm like, she's home. I was like, please come home. She's crying. I don't know what to do. So they came home and they asked her what was wrong. And I could just hear them talking in their language. And all I could do was sit there just staring at her. I couldn't do anything to help. I couldn't even tell her, oh, it's going to be okay. You're home. You're safe now. And then my parents told me what had happened. She got lost, and everywhere she turned, she said it looked like it was the same street. She didn't know who to tell until she could go up to a man. He spoke Spanish. She tried to tell him, I'm lost. And he, like, I guess he figured it out. I don't even know who he was. I honestly believe that it was like an angel from God helping her. And then he brought her home. And so she was just crying. I didn't know what to do. And it was just that feeling of, am I like a bad granddaughter because I don't know her language? There was no form of communication. And I felt horrible. And I still think about it today because I'm like, I could have done something. I could have told her, you know, it's okay. I'm here for you. But since there was that border of just not knowing each other's language, there was no form of communication. The only form of affection I could give her was the physical touch of like hugging her and just speaking to her. Thank you.
Oh, Jennifer, thank you. I could feel those nerves and all that worry. I was worried for Grandma too. Thank you so much. Lincoln, take it away. Judges, do your thing. All right, so we have 2 storytellers left tonight, and next up is Eli Harrington.
Okay. So I can feel the burning sand on my feet like coals that tear my feet in two, just like it was yesterday. I remember seeing the waves crash upon the shore. They were the biggest waves I've ever seen. My dad told me not to go near the ocean today because of how strong the waves were, but it went right through me. All I could focus on was the beautiful, violent waves. I was hypnotized. The strong scent of fish and salt is still stuck in my nose. 4 years later, I still remember how beautiful Cabo San Lucas is and how every day I want to buy a plane ticket and go there. I remember running to the ocean, having no care in the world. This is where the border of safety and danger collides, and my life could have been gone in a flash. My dad chasing after me says stop, but once again, my 10-year-old brain doesn't listen. I wasn't a good swimmer either. As my feet gradually move into the cold, wet sand, that burning sensation goes away. The warm water comes splashing in, fast and violently. I remember getting scared, realizing the waves were 12 feet tall, and I was merely 4 feet tall. I turned around, realizing this was a terrible idea, but my feet were being pulled by the strong tide. It felt as if 20 grown men were pulling on my ankles. I didn't really know what to do, but yell at the top of my lungs. My dad was right behind me, and I got swept away faster than you can say, pickle in a jar. My dad and 2 other men ran after me, but I was being pulled faster and faster into the huge waves in front of me. Crash! The first wave came slamming on me. I felt my soul drift out of my body. I felt like my body was in a washing machine. I wasn't able to think. I wasn't able to breathe. I felt as if my body was being controlled. Second wave crashes, and I kept getting farther and farther out to sea. I felt like I was going to die. As I take my last breath, I hear my dad say, "I'm coming." Next thing I know, he grabs my arm and pulls me out of the water. And what felt like a year of torment was over-ish. I remember being extremely exhausted, like I was up for days at a time. My arms and legs were aching, and I thought my arm was broken. As my dad was pulling me back, my lungs hurt, but I was thankful to be back to shore. I felt the nice warm sun shining right on my face and the burning sand on my back. Thankful to be alive and safe, I coughed up some water and started to cry. My dad was mad, but he was happy I was alive and told me not to go near the ocean without a parent again. And honestly, I would never do that again. Everyone gave me a hug, and we all went back to the pool. There were no waves, and I got a popsicle that might have been the most delicious coconut popsicle I've ever eaten in my life. The rest of the day, I had a lot of fun and went swimming and got really good Mexican food. That night, I couldn't sleep thinking about the terrifying experience. It was swirling in my head like a whirlpool, and I was just happy to be in bed and asleep. That's it.
Thank you, Eli. You know, my kids are older now and I still worry about that every time they're near the water. All right, so Lincoln, we need you. Judges, we need you to do your thing. Audience, go ahead and love them up in the chat. Thank you, Lincoln. Did you guys see somebody used onomatopoeia in the chat? Nice job. Judges, are we ready? Yeah. All right. So our final storyteller tonight, before we have the math geniuses do their thing and we let everybody know the scores tonight, is Fia Ferber.
Hi. If there's baby sounds in the background, I have two very small brothers and they might scream. Just a warning. This is a story about the border between me and my little sister Ella. She was born 10 years ago now. I was 5. Honestly, I don't know if I even liked her at first. I remember being a bit jealous of how much attention she got from my dad and stepmom. I can't say I got much better from there. Now, the little gremlin shared a room with me. She wasn't a pleasant roommate either. She'd kick and bite and scream day and night. Who would choose to bring this kind of demon into their home? Where did they get her? The little demon was 5 by the time my dad and stepmom moved houses for the first time as a family. It was a bigger house, and we still ended up as roommates. And she somehow managed to get the bigger bed. We spent 2 more years in cohabitation and definitely got closer, but she was still a booger-eating kindergartner, and I was quickly shifting from elementary to middle school life, which was a roller coaster of physical and emotional changes. I have to say, I'm embarrassed about the way I treated her then. I didn't do anything cruel, but I wasn't a very nice sister to her. And that pattern that continued from ages 8 through 13. Little tween me just couldn't help it. This child had popped into existence and now I had to be a big kid. It was at that time, my mother had no children other than me, and I was very much an only child. Things have changed since then. Now I have 2 adorable little brothers as well. But the role shift from being 5 and the center of every adult's attention to the one who had to look out for the center of every adult's attention was not one that I immediately adapted to. By the time I was 12, I realized I needed my own space. I told my parents and they agreed to give me a room in the basement. And I got my own queen-size bed. It felt weird being all alone in the empty basement, but I adjusted. My relationship with my dad has been a messy one since I was a little kid. I didn't recognize it then when I was smaller, but he's always been an angry person and a bit of a heavy substance abuser. Our relationship was not necessarily a healthy one, and it consisted of a lot of one-sided screaming matches that I couldn't win. Ella seemed to be rapidly aging at this point. She was already 8. Along with that, the relationship between my dad and I had been rapidly deteriorating. We fought constantly, and my anxiety and depression felt to be at an all-time high. I felt trapped there, and ultimately it met in a huge fight. My dad and I got in a physical altercation, and I left immediately after. I don't think I will ever live with my dad again, and luckily I live with my mom now. I'm much happier and healthier. I've been going to therapy, and I have a support system now that I created for myself, and it truly makes me feel better. My dad's family acts like what he did to me was not a big deal, and there was a minute when I started to believe it, but in my writing this out, it made me realize that what happened was not okay, and it's something that I needed to not just ignore so that my grandparents like me again. Why do you think they treat me different? Because of what their son did. Asking me things like, did I give my dad a hug when I saw my sister last? It's really left an impact, but I don't think they have noticed. The bigger impact, though, has been on my relationship with Ella. I try to see her as often as I can, but it's hard, especially with COVID. There's a border between us, and I'm attempting to breach it. Ultimately, there's not much of a takeaway from this story, but if there's anything it has taught me, it was the acknowledgement of the time that I lost with my sister because of my own actions, because I pushed her away when we were little, and now I might never live with her again. I'm working on myself though, and once I'm ready, I'll find a beautiful place for both of us. That's why I save my money, and that's why I keep working so hard, so maybe we can be roommates once again. And that's that.
Thank you so much, Fia. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
We need a little time for judges to calculate Fia's score. And because she's the last storyteller, they're also going to need a quick minute just to figure out who our first through third place folks are. So Michelle Akron and Joe Martin, go ahead and work your math magic. And we'll come back in just a second with first through third place storytellers. Storytellers, we would love all of you to put your cameras on, and the rest of us on screen will stop our video so that we can get a picture of just the storytellers. And then everybody will come back on. Okay, and Lincoln, take it away. Let's give a little awesome MC trick, you know, with the virtual world. You just kind of disappear. See if you can read my lips. Okay, lots of love for all of our storytellers right now. Let's chat bomb with compliments or avid claps. Woo, we've got her. And then I'm going to announce. So, and then I'm just going to, before we announce, I just want to thank everyone who had a part in making this happen. So our storytellers, the judges, the math geniuses, the audience members, Lincoln for that beautiful music, Mrs. Sullivan for being a literacy champion and cultivating all these opportunities for students. Here we go, everybody. In third place, Macy. Let's see if we can spotlight. Oh, we don't have Macy here with us. Can we spotlight her video? Yeah, nice, Jennifer. Like you're clapping. And then in second place, we have Fia Ferber. And in first place, we have Abdul. Yeah. Abdul is going to compete for Madison Leotis McDaniel tomorrow night.
Awesome.
And Ms. Sullivan, do you have anything else to announce about tomorrow night and tickets for everyone who wants to see this?
Sure. I wasn't prepared to do this, but I can send everybody the link after this. It'll also be posted on the library Instagram and on the library website. And let's see, we wanted to do a group photo with everyone if possible. So group photo with everyone if possible. And then after that, we will say goodbye to our audience and keep the storyteller winners, the top 3, so that I can talk to them about tomorrow.
All righty. So we'll be here for our group photo.
Yeah, we want everyone to turn their cameras on if possible. And then our official photographer will do a screenshot of us all. Sunny, is that working? You'll have to unmute and let us know. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you. Hello, baby Irikawa.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody. Storytellers, you're wonderful.
Awesome
Great.
job, everyone. Thank you. Very powerful.
Good
Thank you so
stuff.
much, you guys.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
Don't leave.
Job. Don't let go.